You must gather your party before venturing forth.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is Josh Strife Hayes, and in this video we are going to continue creating our 5th edition D&D character. Right now we'll be looking at hit points, temporary hit points, and what happens when you nearly die. So let's go. Hit points, as in all video games and tabletop games, are simply a numerical value representative of your character's current total health. If you have maximum hit points, you are completely healthy and ready for an adventure. If you have no hit points, you are essentially unconscious or dead. Anywhere in between those two means you are injured and definitely in pain, but still able to fight. Hit points in Dungeons & Dragons will increase every time you level up. We'll talk about leveling up in a future video, but for now you need to know that your starting hit points are determined by your class, not your race, your class. So fighter, druid, thief, wizard, every class has a different starting hit point. I'll give you an example from one of the classes in the player handbook now. Let's take the example of druid. If you're playing a druid, that's great, all this will apply to you. If you're not playing a druid, simply find the class that you are playing in the player handbook and change all the values around that I give for the values the player handbook assigns you. Let's look at hit dice. Hit dice are the amount of dice you can roll every time you level up to add to your maximum hit points, or the amount of dice you can roll to regain your health at a rest. I'll explain all this much later on. For now, let's take it step by step. The druid has the hit dice of 1d8 per druid level. A d8, remembering, being a dice with 8 sides on it. To find out the hit points that you will start with at level 1, you do the following. You find out what your hit dice is, whether it's a d4, a d6, a d8, a d10 or a d12. You then assume that you have rolled the maximum on that. In this exact example of a druid, that would be 8 on a d8. You then add your constitution modifier. Remember, not your constitution ability score itself, but the modifier, meaning the little plus or the little minus number that comes after that, depending on how high your constitution is. You add those together, and that number, that final number, will be your starting hit point maximum. To give an example of a druid, we have a 1d8 hit dice. The highest you can possibly roll would be 8. If I had a constitution modifier of +2, 8 plus 2 is 10, so my starting hit points with a druid with a constitution modifier of +2 would be 10. Have a look in the player handbook for your own class, work out what your hit dice are, and then look at your player handbook and see what your constitution modifier is. Add the total possible roll from your hit dice and your constitution modifier together to get your starting total hit points. So you've discovered your total starting hit points at level 1. It's the maximum possible roll on your hit dice plus your constitution modifier. But what else can your hit dice be used for? Well, you have, let's imagine, a certain number of hit dice in your hit dice pool. It will just stay there. The amount of dice you have access to is equal to your level. So at level 1 you will have 1 hit dice just hanging around, just waiting around to be used. At level 2 you'll have 2, at level 3 you'll have 3, and the hit dice will be based on your class. We're using druid as the example. Let's say you get into combat, and let's say you get hurt, you lose some hit points. How do you recover them? Well, you could use a potion, or you could have a magic spell cast on you. Both those things would work. Or you could wait until your party and your character is taking a rest. When your party is resting, you then have access to your hit dice. You can roll as many of them as you want, but they do not refresh until you've taken a long rest, as in your characters have gone to sleep for over 8 hours. Let's go back to the example. I'm playing as a druid. I have taken some damage, but my character and my party now come across a small clearing in a forest where they can relax for a bit. I am only level 1, so I only have access to 1 hit dice. I decide to roll this 1 hit dice, which is a d8. I'll do that now. I rolled a 4, which means I now recover 4 hit points. However, I have spent my hit dice and they will not refresh or replenish until I have had a long rest. Your Dungeon Master will be able to explain this to you more. I know it seems like a complex system, but once you've used it once or twice, it's actually remarkably simple. To recap, your starting total hit points will be the maximum potential roll on whatever your class hit dice is, plus your Constitution modifier. And your hit dice can be used every time you have a rest to refill some of your lost health. When you use them, they are then gone away. They only refresh every time you have a long rest. Temporary hit points. Sometimes you will drink a potion or have a special spell cast on you that allows your hit points to go above the current maximum. Now, this is not normally able to happen. You cannot increase your hit points beyond the hit point maximum by, for example, rolling some hit dice during a rest when your health is already at maximum. The times that your hit points can go above your total maximum are few and far between. They are not common occurrences, but if they ever do go above the maximum, they are referred to as temporary hit points. You can record them down on the character sheet in the temporary hit point box. These temporary hit points will go away whenever you have a long rest. You cannot save them. They are most often used for buffing your character up before powerful or dangerous combat scenarios, and then of course when you get hurt, you'll have a larger HP pool to deal with. So we've talked about what happens when your hit points go to the top. They can only go over the top with temporary hit points in a few select situations. What about the opposite? What happens when your hit points reach the bottom, or 0? Having 0 hit points does not kill you immediately. It actually knocks you unconscious. There is an instant death rule that can be applied if your character takes more than their total hit points in a single blow below 0, but talk to your Dungeon Master about whether they want to apply that. That would be an incredibly powerful monster hitting an incredibly powerful blow in one go on you, effectively instantly wiping you out. I don't personally run the instant death rule because I believe it adds too much risk to a character dying. Once you hit 0 hit points, you are knocked unconscious. And every time it becomes your turn again, you will have to roll a death save. If you look at the character sheet, you'll see where it says death saves. Above, you'll see 3 little circles for success and 3 little circles for failure. Death saves are simply rolling a d20. You cannot add any modifiers to this roll. Nothing will change it. If you roll 10 or higher, that is a single success. If you roll less than 10, that is a failure. Every time it is your turn, you get to roll the d20 once. If you reach 3 successes, you will stabilize on 1 hit point, as in you can get back into the fight. If you hit 3 failures, your character is dead permanently. Resurrection is possible, but it's incredibly expensive and very, very rare. If, while rolling the death save, you roll a 20, a natural 20 on a dice with 20 sides, you will instantly and immediately stabilize on 1 hit point. If, however, you roll a 1, it will count as 2 failures instead of just a single failure. If another character in the scenario is able to get to your character and use their turn to apply medical aid to you, they can help you either instantly succeed on a death save or stabilize you on 1 hit point. How your Dungeon Master wishes to deal with this is up to them. So speak to them and see how death works. It's very hard to die permanently in 5th edition, but it's definitely possible if you are stupid. So to recap, hit points, temporary hit points, and death saves. Hit points are a numerical value of your life. At level 1, all characters will start with the maximum possible roll on their hit dice, plus their constitution modifier as their total maximum hit points. Every time you level up, you will roll a dice, whichever your hit dice is, and then add your constitution modifier to that roll and increase your total hit points by that number. Your hit dice are a pool of reserved health that you can tap into every time you have a short rest. The hit dice you have access to are exactly the same as your regular character's hit dice, and the amount you have access to is equal to your level. If you ever hit 0 HP, you are unconscious. Every time it's your turn, you will roll a death save, a d20. If you roll 10 or greater, you succeed. If you roll less than 10, you fail. If you reach 3 successes first, you stabilize on 1 hit point. If you reach 3 failures, you die. If you ever roll a 20 during a death save, you instantly stabilize on 1 hit point. If you ever roll a 1 during a death save, that counts as 2 failures. Hit points will be something you explore more during combat with your dungeon master, so feel free to speak to them and ask them how do they want to play hit points in this game. As usual, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below or come and visit me live at Twitch on twitch.tv/Josh Strife Hayes. Thank you for watching, and as usual, gather your party and venture forth.